Hi, I'm Marc Dulude. I'm going to take you through my CJ3 Plus 825 Mike Delta. Probably you could guess that one, that's my tail number, MD, Marc Dulude, Mike Delta. I had this built 6 years ago, 2017, and it was at the time the 2000th Citation jet built, and so it got a bunch of press and magazine covers. All very exciting stuff at the time. Now it is a CJ3 Plus like any other, so let me show it to you. So first place I always start is here at the aft storage area, which is where the battery is also contained. So aft storage area, as you can see, voluminous, fits 600 pounds of whatever it is that you want to put in there, and it's a lot of luggage that you can put in there. So you connect the battery up from here. I have just done that, and so every time I do that, when the battery is connected, just my procedure, I make sure that this is locked, and if it's unlatched, then I know the battery's not connected. Then I check the J box or junction box here in the rear area, looking for any circuit breakers that might have popped. Any that do show popped are maintenance events, and that did happen to me once with one of them in a remote location, remote airport, and I called Team 525, and thankfully we got it resolved pretty quickly. Then I go and I check here, turning the light on. The light works, means we've got power, and I check the fire extinguishing system. Here you can see the pressure gauge, and since I've done it so often, I know that that is the correct indication for the pressure that we should have in that system. Lock it back up again with the screw and cover it up. Light goes off, and then I close the door. And my procedure, I think most Citation pilots have the same one, is if the door is closed, it is locked. It's easy to unlock it again. It's a real pain if you've left it unlocked and then you start the engines up and you get a message that says your aft storage door is unlocked. So if it's closed, it's locked. And the way that Cessna has built this indicator goes in line with the lock when it is locked. So I can do a quick walk around and I'll know that it's locked. So next, I will go in to the cockpit and turn on the battery, and I'm going to do a check of hots and lights. So heated elements for anti-ice, as well as the lights around. I turn those on, turn the battery on, I turn them on, and then I do a walk around to check them, turn the battery off, and then we can take our time. Battery goes on, one of the switches here. I start turning on lights and heat. There are very few switches in the CJ3 Plus. Almost everything goes through the Garmin G3000 avionics system. In my opinion, Garmin is the best avionics system for general aviation, business aviation today. Very, very simple to operate, and everything ends up coming through, almost everything comes through that system to help automate your processes and put in front of you the information that you need at that moment. Once I've checked that I've got the fuel load that I want and the battery voltage, I turn off the pitot heat, because I have found that that is exactly the right amount of time to get the heat that I'm looking for to test. Just tap, you can feel it quickly, and then look back under the fuselage and you see the light. Same thing over on this side, and the light. I come over and I check the third pitot tube as well as the angle of attack vane, move it around aggressively, and I can feel the heat. These are the so-called shark lights or emergency lights. They need to be working. And then I can see here the strobe lights and the nav lights. I keep walking. I'm checking the down lights here on the tail, as well as the rear light. I keep walking. I checked for the other wingtip for the nav lights and strobe lights, they're operating. And then finally the wing inspection light for ice wing inspection. Then I go in and turn off the battery. So now that I've done the hots and lights check, we're going to do a more detailed pre-flight. I actually do a little bit more than what I'm showing you here, but for the sake of this video, we'll try and cover some of the main points. So we check first here on the storage. We're making sure that the ballast weight is here, as well as anything that I wanted loaded is here. This area takes 400 pounds, the aft area takes 600 pounds, so 1,000 pounds of unpressurized storage. 60 pounds of ballast I have found works perfectly for me, that enables every possible mission. So me alone on a short flight, me on a really long flight. A few days ago I had 7 people in the airplane, golf clubs and luggage, and just by moving one of these bags I could accommodate every single weight and balance scenario there is. So I leave those in place. The load carrying of the CJ3 Plus is such that it really doesn't ever seem to diminish what I'm able to carry. So once again, close up the nose and lock it. So I'm checking the tire, I'm checking connections, I'm looking for any unusual wear and anything that might be disconnected. So for instance here, there's a bonding cable. At one time when I was doing this inspection, I noticed it was dangling, so this tie wrap had broken. You don't want anything dangling not where it's supposed to be, so I went and I got that fixed as well. That's the kind of thing that you're looking for. Checking on the radome. The radar is directly behind this nose. Any dents, dings that are on here will distort your radar picture, so you want to make sure that everything is intact here. Then you get to the other side of that front nose storage area, and here are the typical Citation gauges that most of the Citations have. So brake fluid, we can take a look. There's 2 sight gauges that they use very, very often in some of their fluid systems. Power brake accumulator, gear and brake emergency pneumatic pressure, windshield alcohol. That's a backup system for the heated windshield that we have for ice protection on the airplane. But if it turned out that something was going wrong, you have 10 minutes of alcohol use. And then here is oxygen levels and the oxygen fill port right here that you connect up your oxygen supply to when it's time to add more oxygen. So we're checking probes here as well. So this is one of the probes that provides some of the avionics, some of its information. We're checking these drains to make sure that they're clear as well. We're looking at this cover. If it's black, so this has been popped out, it means that there was an overpressure situation, and now you will have a problem with your oxygen. You cannot dispatch. We've already checked on the pitot and the angle of attack. We're checking the engine, make sure that covers are off and we're not seeing anything unusual. This whole shiny area in the front of the wing is a heated wing for anti-ice. So bleed air comes off of the engine, goes through a tube here to heat this surface. But you don't want this to get too hot because it could end up giving you a problem with the fuel. So there is an air channel that goes around the heated channel, and air enters through this area. So you want to make sure that these vents are clear. Having been clear, now we take a look here at the tire and the wheel assembly. Just like on the nose, we're looking for anything unusual wear pattern, something disconnected, fluid that's not looking out of place, door is connected, that kind of thing. We continue along here, looking to make sure nothing is damaged, nothing is run into it. Fuel cap is in place. And then underneath the wing, we check each time this NACA vent here. That's what allows air to go into the wing as fuel leaves the wing. It has happened before. People covered it either for paint or for washing, forgot to uncover it, and then air was unable to enter, wing collapses. Bad outcome. So I'll talk just a little bit louder. The airplane beside us just started up engines, but we're almost done anyways before getting into the cockpit. So we're moving the aileron, making sure we can see the yoke moving as well, and checking out some of these cables are correctly bonded. We come back here, we look at the back of the tire and the wheel assembly. We can see more here than we could up front. Everything looks good. One of the nice things with the modern CJs compared to some of the older ones is this door that allows you easy visibility for the sight gauge on the oil. Oil is good. And then this is an oil pressure relief valve check. You don't see it, you put your finger in there and you can feel that there's nothing that's protruding. Next, we check out the hydraulic reservoir. All you're looking for here is your sight gauges for levels, no fluid, and all of these still appear to be contiguous. And then anybody that has flown a 3+ will tell you to be careful about these drain masks when you stand up. Yes, feel free to ask me how I know. We check out the back of the engine because people have been known to start up engines not recalling that they had a cover in the back. Very dangerous. Nothing else in there as well. Now we're looking at the trim tabs for the elevator. When you do it enough, you see that they're in the right position. And we're checking static wicks like we do on the wings as well. We continue walking around. We can see the vortex generators on the vertical stab. And we do the same check here of the oil pressure relief valve and the oil sight gauge. Same thing as on the other side. Once again here we're checking where we have much more visibility on the tire tread and on the wheel assembly. Continue walking along, checking our cables for bonding. Trim tab is neutral here. Same thing, no noises, no unusual sounds, no resistance. NACA vent is in place. Fuel cap is in place. No damage to the leading edge. Tire and wheel assembly, no unusual fluids, nothing disconnected. Treads look good. Once again, we check these ports, or these vents, I should say, for the inlet to the cooling air. And we check to make sure there's nothing here in the front of the engine nacelle. All right, we're done now with the exterior walk around. Let's go inside and do our next steps. Okay, so what we usually do is that we start with flows on almost everything and then back it up with checklist. So the flow for the beginning of the cockpit preparation is to start on the left and go all the way around to the right-hand side. So we check here for what our oxygen masks are. We'll connect up the oxygen for when we're going. The connections here are good. We're physically touching the circuit breakers because sometimes it's tough to tell if they've been tripped or not. We'll have our switches in the correct positions. So just going through here, air source selector, which is the source of pressurization. We're going through checking all of our anti-ice systems are not on at this point. Gear handle is down, throttles are off. Switches here are all in the correct position. And we do the same thing here with circuit breakers on the right. All looking good. Same checks here. Everything here is looking as it should. So we're going to start out by looking at the standby flight display. We check by going to the test mode, leaving it for 5 seconds. It's green. comes up, that's the yellow is correct, arm here, and then battery is coming on. So all of the systems are now starting to come up. I use another process, which is if the brakes are applied, which I'm doing right now, my brakes off sign comes off. The two always go together. So I've now put the brakes on and the system is coming up. If I wanted to, I could have picked up the ATIS and even a clearance using my dispatch switch, so that would only turn on one radio, uses almost no battery power. Typically I've done that quite a bit when I'm in South America, Europe, the North Atlantic, where you're not sure if you're actually going to get an engine start clearance right away. In this case, we know that we'll get our clearance and there's no need for an engine start clearance. So we'll start right from this point. So now you're presented here on this touch panel, or a Garmin touch controller. So you see that the database is already. I'll just turn off that speaker just so we're not getting all of that sound. Databases are ready, and you can see exactly which databases are in place. We go to our next screen where we're going to be calculating the weights for departure. So it has the operating weight, has me and my stores listed. All I do is enter the number of passengers and cargo. I sync with the fuel on board. Now everything is set. And then I tell it how much fuel reserve I want. I leave mine at a default value. So now I would be loading the flight plan that we're going to follow. This aircraft has the Flight Stream 510, a Garmin product. So right from my flight, I just said share the plan with the Garmin G3000. And it asks me, do I want to replace the standby flight plan? I say yes. Then I get to check to make sure it's exactly what I wanted. It is. Look at all those inputs I didn't have to do. So now I've come back to this flight plan, and I go to the standby flight plan. That's what we just loaded and checked. And I just say activate, and it says, do you want to activate it and replace the current plan? I say yes. There, the entire flight plan has been entered, and I've already checked it. So now I go to my next step, which is where I'm telling the system at what altitude I'm going to be flying. In this case, flight level 390. And I can help its calculations by putting in some targets and some wind and temps, but I just leave all of those at the default. That's complete. Then I tell it which runway I want to depart. So let's say that I'm going to depart runway 04. I load the weather. I can either do it automatically, or let's just say that I'm going to put what the ATIS has given me at 040 at 2, temperature of 31, and all of my factors here are defaults that I've used. Now I'm focusing on this area to check. Here's what it's telling me. It's giving me my V-speeds, it's giving me all of my weights and configuration, and then it says there's 8,500 feet of available runway, and I will only need 2,980 feet to depart. So the told calculation, takeoff and landing data, has already been completed. I'm going to accept those speeds and move on. So you see, each step I just say next, and it steps me through the next thing I need to do. So I'm going to turn this sound back on because you hear sounds. So let's go to the system tests.
Aft snaggage smoke. Aft snaggage smoke. Left engine fire. Right engine fire. Forward snaggage smoke.
All check OK.
Landing gear.
Angle of attack you can feel as well in the stick shaker. Now I'm just turning on the windshield heat. I should see the windshield overtemp come into play. Turn it off. I'll hear the overspeed warning. Anti-skid. You see the message come up on the CAS display, the crew alert system. It'll disappear after 6 seconds, as it should. Annunciators, all of the lights we should be checking. All are good. Radio altimeter, we see is checking correct. And rudder bias, we get a rudder bias fail. So we have now passed all of our system tests. You can see everything is checked, so we're ready to accept the initialization. Our flight plan is loaded. We are ready to go. So now, let's go and use the electronic checklist here. I usually put it on this screen, but just to make it a little easier for the photography, I'll put it up on this screen. So I would go through each one of these steps and I'm checking to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. So the pre-flight inspection is complete, circuit breakers were all in, we checked to make sure the gen switches were in the right position, emergency lights we armed, standby flight display, remember we checked and that turned on, we verified the battery and turned it on, and then all switches we did that check, that left to right flow. We're checking fuel quantity and balance, and that initialization pages are all of those system tests that we went through. Everything was checked. Oxygen mask, we made sure we're connected. Parking brake is set, as you recall. We would have the wheel chocks pulled. We would have done that as the final step on the external walk around. Cabin door is locked. I got all the indications on the door, and I would have no indication here on the CAS. We have the door open right now just because of the video. Passenger briefing, we would do a safety briefing, have done one, and it is complete. Checking seat belts, and then the lights are all as required. We would check final indications for any engine anomalies. Air conditioning is off for batteries for engine start, and I like checking to make sure that I have access to XM weather. So now we'd be ready to start the engines. First thing is that we go through G waves that many of us use, checking gen switches, wind direction and speed, anti-ice systems are all off, enunciators, air conditioning is off, that we have at least 24 volts, and then we would start the timer to make sure of engine start limitations. We press the engine start button, move the throttle up over the gate, and then check the iPhone checklist, which is ignition, fuel, oil, N1 rise, and ITT rise. We do that for both engines, then we are ready to go. This is the 8th airplane that I've owned, and so that's how I came up with 825 Mike Delta. I started out like everybody with a pretty small airplane, so I had a 182, then a Mooney, then a Mirage, then a jet prop, then a TBM, so all the single engine turboprop time. Then I moved to a Mustang and an M2 and then a CJ3 Plus, the one that I have here. The CJ3 Plus does everything that I would like to do with it. I did a very comprehensive review of CJ3 Plus, CJ4, Phenom 300 before making my decision for the CJ3 Plus. It does everything well. It goes to flight level 450 and it climbs there non-stop in virtually any conditions. It flies well over 400 knots, even at 450. It beats every single number that Textron or Cessna has put into the book, so it takes off in less distance, lands in less distance, goes further, flies faster. It's truly an extraordinary machine. It takes about 1,200 pounds of fuel in the first hour, kind of a rule of thumb, and then about 750 pounds per hour at cruise after that. So flame out time with the 4,710 pounds on board is right around 5 hours and 40 minutes or so. So if you're flying 4.5 hours, you're still landing with over an hour of fuel. The range is indicated as being 2,000 nautical miles at long-range cruise. Very few people want to fly at long-range cruise. The numbers I've given are for max cruise. So at max cruise, it'll do about 1,800 nautical miles. I've personally flown it almost 1,700 nautical miles to get to the northern tip of Newfoundland from the Midwest. I've flown the airplane everywhere from South America, Latin America, Caribbean, US, Canada, North Atlantic, through Europe. I virtually do not fly commercially. I fly in this airplane. It meets every one of my needs. I'll sometimes carry 6 or 7 passengers, like when I did the Citation Special Olympics airlift. One of the greatest things that you can do. Certainly sign up for that if you get the chance. And I was transporting Special Olympians. I also just had a golf trip and transported the 4 pairs of people in the airplane, as well as with golf bags and clubs. It's just an absolutely amazing airplane. When you're departing, if you need to, you can be climbing at more than 5,000 feet a minute, even in warm conditions. It's extremely docile with its characteristics. I had an autopilot failure at 450, and I hand flew for an hour and a half at 450. And you know, the simulator, to tell you how difficult that is, and I can assure you I'm no super pilot, it was pretty easy to do that, to fly it. So it's very docile flying characteristics. Doesn't surprise you in anything that it does. The G3000 system on board, I think, is the best system available for Part 23 aircraft in the world today. It presents everything just when you need it in the best way, and if you want to, you can find the same information multiple ways. The connections with your mobile devices is outstanding, as I've demonstrated in the cockpit preparation phase of these videos. All in all, with the CJ3 Plus, Cessna knocked the cover off the ball. It's an outstanding aircraft, and you should take a look at it.